Hello, my name is LeBron Witherspoon, and today you're going to be calling me Mr. Witherspoon because I'm going to be showing you the part 1 mini tutorial of the 2D vector Pythagorean theorem and SOHCAHTOA assignment. So for part 1, it says, what is the difference between 1D and 2D vectors? Now for 1D vectors, it's usually measured in a straight line because you're only measuring a straight line measurement. Like, for example, I chose to use a 9-inch ruler because I'm only measuring from left to right or up and down, usually with rulers. And so I chose to use this line to measure 6 inches out of 9 inches of the ruler. Now, for 2D vectors, it's usually like the combination of two 1D vectors. So I chose to use the hypotenuse of a right angle because that's usually the sum of the two 1D vectors. Now, and I will show you like in the next example or the next question. So for question 2, it asks, how do you add vectors going in different directions? So for this question, I chose to use a word problem that'll better like explain the answer to this question. So in the word problem, it says, Miss Lane walked 30 meters north and then 40 meters west. Determine her final placement. So basically, all right, the problem was asking us about her final displacement. So what we know is that she walked 30 meters north and then 40 meters west. So we know that we have to add the 1D vector, which is 30 meters north, and then and another 1D vector, which is 40 meters west. All right. So in order to draw that out and write that out, like to better show y'all, this is like how the two vectors will look. And this would be the distance between those two vectors. And if you wanted to put that on a right triangle, this is how it would look. So this would be her going 30 meters north. That is north because it is going up. And that would be her going 40 meters west. And that is west because it is going to the left. And then the hypotenuse would be basically the 2D vector, which is the combination of those two vectors, which makes the right triangle. And usually if you would want to solve for like what the hypotenuse was, you would just use like the tan method because you know that you have the adjacent and you know that's the adjacent because it's on the side, like it's on the opposite side of the angle. And you know this is the opposite because this is the opposite side of the hypotenuse. And this is where her standing point would be. And that would be how you would solve it. And you would use the tangent, meaning like you won't have since you're trying to search for the hypotenuse, you would divide the opposite. You would divide the adjacent over the opposite. And like I said right there, and that was how you would get the degree and the placement to find where Miss Lane was walking and her displacement. So for question 3, since we just used the tan method, it says, how do you find sine, cos, or tangent? So sine, cosine, or tangent. So what we learned in class will be the 4-step method. And basically, I'm going to walk you through the 4-step method. So for number 1 of the 4-step method, it'd be to find which two sides we know. So on a right angle, you're going to always have 3 sides: opposite, adjacent, and the hypotenuse. And usually in the equation, you're gonna always have 2 out of the 3 sides in the equation. So it'll either be like opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse and adjacent, or opposite and hypotenuse, or adjacent and opposite. But all right, so the best method to use is the SOHCAHTOA method. And basically it's like an abbreviation to like know which sign to use, like which one to use when it comes to sine, cosine, or tangent. So basically, if you would use sine if you only have the answers to the opposite and adjacent sides of the triangle. That is when you would use sine. And you would use cosine if you only have the degrees or the measurements of the adjacent and hypotenuse side of the triangle. And you will only use tangent if you only have the measurement of the opposite and adjacent side to the triangle. I don't know if y'all can see that. You gotta focus. All right, boom. So right now, since we just went over the part 1 mini tutorial, we are now going to go over the part 2 full tutorial of the 2D vectors, Pythagorean theorem, and SOHCAHTOA assignment. So, with the part 2 full tutorial, it said, using the following measurements, explain and write out the process and final answer using the Pythagorean theorem and SOHCAHTOA method. So, the question asks, a car traveled 50 kilometers at 60 degrees south of east. How far south is the car from its starting point? So we know that the car traveled 50 kilometers at 60 degrees south of east. So since we know that it went 60 degrees south of east, we already knew that our two 1D vectors will go one south, which is that line, and then to the second, it will be east, which is this line. Because, you know, if we were to draw the compass, you know, that'll be north, that'll be east, that'll be south, and that'll be west. So it says a car travels at 50 kilometers at 60 degrees at an angle. So you know that they already gave you the degrees of the angle. So you knew that was going to be 60 off top. And so it says how far south if the car is from the starting point. So since we know that it traveled 50 kilometers, so you would have to label that. So that will be the total distance of both the 1D and 2D vectors. Because it said that in the border problem, it said that the car traveled 50 kilometers at 60 degrees south of east. So basically, since the angle is right there, and you know that the car traveled 50 kilometers, you knew that this will be this will be labeled the 50 kilometers, and this will be the total measurement of the 1D and 2D vectors. So basically, what we are trying to find is the 1D and 2D vectors, and you will basically do that by using the tangent method, because the O and the A is what's missing. And once you label it, you know that this is the A because this is the opposite side of the hypotenuse from the angle, like how the triangle is written out. You know that this is the adjacent side because this is the opposite side of the hypotenuse, which is this side. And you know that this is the opposite side because it's across from the given angle, and this is the given angle, which is the 60 degrees. So you know that since we're searching for opposite and adjacent, that we're going to use the tangent method. And if you type in your calculator these two numbers over each other, you should get the answer, which is the 50 kilometers, the answer is how south the car is from the starting point, and that is the starting point, because you're traveling 50 kilometers south of east. I hope you had a good day, and I'm signing out.